niggas got HIV around me and I gotta drink with these niggas. Oh, shit. Fuck you. I gotta see these niggas fight till they blood.
He's talking in code. No, the nigga bent over the couch. Who? Meek Mill?
Orlando Brown has been called a lot of things. Unstable, attention-seeking, a joke, a crash out. For years, his name has been used as a punchline anytime he opened his mouth about the entertainment industry. Clips of him yelling, rambling, or laughing mid-sentence went viral, while the actual content of what he was saying got buried. And that's exactly why people are paying attention now, because suddenly, too many of his old statements are lining up with conversations the industry can no longer avoid. This time, Orlando isn't trending because of a meltdown or a meme. He's trending because he's naming names, connecting dots, and insisting that what happened behind closed doors wasn't just messy, it was dangerous. In recent interviews, Orlando claimed that certain gatherings associated with Diddy weren't just about excess or power, but about recklessness, secrecy, and silence. He alleged that people inside those circles were exposed to serious harm and that nobody spoke up, not because they didn't know, but because speaking up would cost them everything. These are his claims, made publicly, repeatedly, and without hesitation. What's different now is the timing, because Orlando made similar statements years ago, long before Cassie filed her lawsuit, long before federal raids, long before documentaries and resurfaced footage changed public perception. Back then, nobody listened. Now, people are rewinding the tape. One moment that keeps resurfacing is Orlando's claim that he crossed paths with Diddy when he was still a teenager. In interviews, he placed that first interaction around age 15 or 16, early 2000s. That timeline raised eyebrows, because around that same period, Diddy appeared on Nickelodeon's All That, during the era when Dan Schneider was executive producer. At the same time, Orlando was working within the Nickelodeon system himself, including projects like Maniac Magi. No accusation is made.
And he's still sound asleep. What are we gonna do? I don't know. You know, in situations like this, I always ask myself, what would P. Diddy do? Well, what would P. Diddy do? No, I don't know. Hey, let's ask him. Oh, okay. P. Diddy?
What's up?
We can't wake up Shane.
You try symbols?
Yep.
What about sour milk?
Didn't work.
Tell you what, take this toy helicopter, put it down his pants.
All right, we'll do it. We'll do.
The much
by
larger
that
power
overlap
structure
alone.
that rarely
But
gets
people noticed
questioned.
the
In this
coincidence.
video,
And
we're
once
breaking
people
down that
started
structure,
looking,
starting
they
with
found
Diddy
more
and moving
moments
upward
that
toward the
felt
names that
off.
almost never come
And
under
all that
scrutiny.
sketch featuring
the
Diddy
top of this
resurfaced,
hierarchy,
where a
People
group of
always
young
knew the
cast
industry had
members
dirt,
seek his
but these
advice
claims
in a
take it to
slapstick
another
scene.
level.
The
Now,
punchline,
before anyone
intended
brushes
as
this off,
comedy at the
we have
time,
to talk about how
involves a
Orlando
suggestion
constantly
that
gets
today's
labeled as
viewers find
crazy
deeply
or a liar
uncomfortable.
whenever he
When
speaks up.
comedian Cat
But when
Williams
people actually
reposted
slow
that
down
clip
and
with
look
the
into some of
caption,
his past
"They're all
statements,
in it,"
parts of his
it sent
story
the
line up
internet
more
into
than
a
critics want
spiral.
to admit.
Not
In a
because
recent
the sketch
interview,
proved
Orlando
anything,
said he
but
first
because
crossed paths
context
with Diddy
changes
when he
meaning.
was around
And
50.
context
Among the
is
allegations
everything
discussed
right now.
online
For years,
are private
Orlando
gatherings
Brown has
sometimes
gone on
referred to
podcasts
as freak-offs,
claiming he was present
where
in
attendees
spaces
were
where
allegedly
powerful
placed in
artists,
compromised
executives,
positions,
and insiders
sometimes without
moved
full
freely
awareness of what was
around
happening.
Diddy. At the
Public
time,
reporting
fans
indicates that
dismissed
more
it
than
as clout
100
chasing.
individuals have
But
come
now,
forward with
with
accusations
lawsuits, federal
connected to Diddy's alleged
investigations, and
activities.
documentaries
Orlando has
dropping,
gone on
people
podcasts
are
and
asking a
YouTube
different
shows claiming
question.
he was around
Was
rappers who
Orlando
partied closely
warning
with
people
Diddy.
long
Back
before
then,
anyone was
fans
ready
called
to
it
listen?
clout chasing and wild talk.
Another
But now
detail
people are
that's getting
looking back
renewed
and asking if
attention is an
Orlando was
interview
warning
from
everyone
August
long before
2022,
Kurt strictly on
more
what
than
he's
a
been
year
saying.
before Cassie's
Some of it starts
lawsuit,
sounding less
where
random
Orlando
and more
randomly
calculated.
brought Diddy
For
into the
years,
conversation
Orlando
Including
has
claims
and implied
involving
something
minors.
inappropriate had happened
These are
between
serious
them. At the
allegations
time, it
and
sounded
remain part of
incoherent.
ongoing
now,
legal
people
processes.
are rewatching it with a very
Attention
different
intensified
lens, and that's
further
the
after
pattern.
50 Cent
Almost
released his
everything
Netflix
Orlando
documentary,
says sounds
The Reckoning,
chaotic on
which
the
reignited
surface.
discussion
But when
around
you
the case.
isolate the claims,
The documentary did not
ignore
claim
the
to resolve the
delivery,
issue,
and
but it
compare
added momentum
timelines,
to a
some
conversation
of
many
it
believe
stopped
was being
sounding
avoided.
random.
What many
It
viewers
starts
focus
sounding
on,
like
however,
someone
is the
talking around
growing
something
belief
painful.
that Diddy may not
That
have
theory
been acting
gained
alone.
even more weight
This
when
is
people
where
dug up
Rogan's
less
commentary
viral
Point feel like you needed to get tested after that, after finding out that you were just like there was multiple.
Nah, because I didn't find out to the trial. But these Diddy parties were so close because they all had STDs. So almost like having a disease is a rite of passage for
interviews, the ones that didn't blow up on social media. In those, Orlando appears calm, focused, even protective. In one interview, when asked what advice he would give to young people who want to enter entertainment, his answer shocked viewers. Don't do it. No jokes, no theatrics, no chaos. Just warning. He urged young people to choose safer paths, to avoid chasing fame, and to protect themselves from an industry that, in his words, comes with hidden costs nobody explains up front. When the interviewer noticed Orlando getting emotional and asked why this mattered so much to him, he didn't deflect. He said he didn't want them hurt. That moment changed how a lot of people see him. Because pain doesn't perform well, but it tells the truth. In more recent interviews, Orlando has gone back and forth between humor and seriousness, almost like a switch flips when conversations get too close to real trauma. Some viewers interpret that as instability, others see it as defense. Things escalated again when Orlando insisted that he does not speak in code, and that when he names people, he means it literally. That's when he brought up long-running rumors involving Diddy and Meek Mill. These rumors have circulated online for years. Meek has denied them publicly and even offered money to investigate and clear his name.
We made love.
Who you made love with?
Diddy, Bow Wow, Busta Rhymes.
You just told me you see Busta in the airport too. That motherfucker tried to act like he didn't know you. You smashed Drake?
No, I never smashed.
Oh, you made love to Drake.
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. Usher. Usher's a gusher. And
why you not naming no hoes?
I'm telling you, bro. It's my dad's friends. My dad sent his baddest friend.
Orlando responded by saying the truth couldn't be erased. Again, these are claims, not facts. But what caught people's attention was how aggressively Meek distanced himself from Diddy around the same time older clips resurfaced and documentaries began rolling out. Since then, Meek has largely gone quiet. That silence is doing what silence often does. It's making people talk louder. Other figures like Chino have added fuel by claiming Meek was closely connected to Diddy during certain periods. These statements are contested, disputed, and unproven, but they keep stacking. And then comes the most disturbing part of Orlando's recent claims. He alleged that serious health risks were ignored inside certain elite circles, and that people who knew better stayed quiet. Similar statements were echoed by Jaguar Wright, who claimed, again as her own assertion, that multiple industry figures were affected and protected by silence. None of this has been proven. But when multiple people from different corners of the industry keep telling variations of the same story, people stop dismissing it as coincidence. They start asking why. Why do careers skyrocket overnight? Why do others disappear just as fast? Why do some rumors never die no matter how hard they're mocked? Orlando keeps...
Smash. You gave me the oosh-gash muaf, the shmoo smash. Diddy. Yeah, son. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You gave me the oosh-gash muash. I love it, yo. I love it. You gave me the oosh-gash muash.
And
that oosh-gash muash. You know what I'm talking about, Diddy?
saying the truth in this industry doesn't come out clean. It comes out sideways, in jokes, in breakdowns, in people everyone was told not to take seriously. And that's the part that's making people uncomfortable. Because if he's lying, the stories should have died years ago. But they didn't. They waited. And now, with documentaries dropping, lawsuits unfolding, and old clips resurfacing, the industry is being forced to answer questions it's avoided for decades. Not about one man, but about the system that keeps producing the same silence. And in part 2, we're going to talk about why every time these conversations get close to power, the narrative suddenly shifts. away from the claims and straight toward discrediting the messenger. Every time stories like this surface, something predictable happens. The conversation doesn't focus on what was said. It focuses on who said it. That shift is not accidental, because in industries built on image, credibility is currency. And the fastest way to neutralize a dangerous claim isn't to disprove it, it's to discredit the person making it. That's why Orlando Brown's name matters so much. Not because everyone believes him, but because the system has spent years training the public not to. Whenever Orlando speaks, the same cycle kicks in. Clips are shortened. The wildest moments are highlighted. His past struggles are
something that you could say to the kid that's like right now in the hood, wants to be an actor, you know what I mean, wants to pursue that goal, but really don't know how to get started.
Don't do it.
Don't do it?
Nah, you don't want to be no actor. You don't want to be no singer. You want to be an astronaut. You want to be a scientist. You want to be
When the interviewer pushed him to explain why he was so serious about protecting young people, Orlando didn't joke or dodge the question.
a doctor. You want to be a lawyer. You don't want to be no actor. You don't want to be no singer. You don't want to do nothing in entertainment. Focus on things that are natural and that are from God. God-given things that you can do if you just apply your mind.
You're like tearing up while you're saying that, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's real. It's real.
I don't want them hurt. Yeah.
weaponized. Memes replace context. And just like that, the substance disappears. But here's what people are starting to notice. That same strategy has been used on almost everyone who ever tried to talk about the darker side of the entertainment industry. Jaguar Wright, Cat Williams, former assistants, background performers, ex-employees, different personalities, different delivery styles, same response. They're labeled bitter, unstable, clout chasing, unreliable. And once that label sticks, nobody has to engage with the claims anymore. This is why part 2 of this story isn't really about Orlando. It's about how power reacts when it feels threatened, because power rarely argues facts. It attacks messengers. When Orlando claimed that certain elite spaces associated with Diddy involved serious risks and hidden consequences, the pushback wasn't, here's evidence that's false. It was, look at Orlando, look at how he talks. That's not a rebuttal, that's a deflection. And people are starting to recognize it because they've seen it before. They saw it with Harvey Weinstein accusers before the dam broke. They saw it with Epstein whistleblowers who were ignored for decades. They saw it with R. Kelly victims who were dismissed until the evidence became unavoidable. In all of those cases, the warning signs were there long before accountability arrived. They were just inconvenient. What's making this moment different is that Orlando's claims are no longer isolated. They're being echoed, not word for word, but pattern for pattern by other voices. Jaguar Wright has repeatedly spoken about what she describes as a culture of silence, leverage, and quiet destruction inside the industry. She claims people know things, but stay quiet because exposure would cost them their careers, their access, and their protection. Again, these are her statements. But when those statements line up with Orlando's, and when they line up with resurfaced clips, lawsuits, and documentaries, people start asking whether something deeper is being avoided. This is where the focus shifts to how the industry controls narratives, not through censorship, through incentives. Think about it. Most major platforms rely on advertising, corporate partnerships, access to artists, exclusive interviews, distribution deals. That means media outlets don't just report on the industry, they're embedded in it. So when a story threatens powerful figures or corporations, the coverage doesn't disappear. It gets reshaped. Headlines become vague, language becomes careful, context gets stripped away. The audience is given enough information to feel informed, but not enough to feel alarmed. That's why many people noticed how quickly conversations around Diddy narrowed. The focus became, His personal behavior, his relationships, his image, but not. The systems that enabled him, the networks that protected him, the people who benefited from proximity. And that's not unique. It's structural. This same narrowing happens every time. Which brings us back to Meek Mill. When long-running rumors involving Meek and Diddy resurfaced, Meek responded publicly, strongly denying any involvement and even offering money for a private investigation. That response did two things. First, it put distance between him and the narrative. Second, it signaled fear, not necessarily of guilt, but of association. Because in an industry like this, perception alone can be damaging. What caught people's attention afterward wasn't just the denial, it was the silence that followed. After documentaries dropped and conversations intensified, Meek stopped engaging publicly. And when silence follows denial, speculation fills the gap. That doesn't mean the rumors are true. It means the environment no longer trusts simple explanations. And that's the real crisis the industry is facing right now: trust. For decades, fans were told, fame is earned, success is merit-based, opportunity is fair. But as more stories surface, people are questioning whether talent was ever the only currency, or whether loyalty, silence, and access played a bigger role than anyone admitted. This is where Orlando's emotional interviews hit differently. When he tells young people not to enter entertainment, when he warns them to choose safer paths, he's not selling a conspiracy, he's expressing regret. And regret is hard to fake consistently, especially when it costs you relevance. Another reason people are reevaluating Orlando is because of how his demeanor changes. When he's joking, laughing, or exaggerating, the internet treats it as proof he's unreliable. But when he slows down, when he becomes serious, the energy shifts. Some viewers interpret that as manipulation, others see trauma. Psychologists often say humor is one of the most common defense mechanisms against unresolved pain. And when people start viewing Orlando through that lens, his behavior stops being funny. It starts being sad. That doesn't make every claim true, but it makes dismissal irresponsible. What's also raising eyebrows is how fast conversations get shut down when certain types of harm are mentioned. Not accusations, just discussion. The moment topics like exploitation, coercion, or health risks enter the conversation, the reaction isn't curiosity, it's shutdown, jokes, mockery, distraction. Why? Because those topics don't just threaten individuals, they threaten liability, they threaten institutions, they threaten legacies, and legacies are expensive to protect. This is why older clips, interviews, and warnings are being revisited right now. Not because people suddenly believe everything, but because they're realizing how often they were trained not to listen. The industry has always relied on one assumption: that time would bury everything. But time didn't bury these stories, it preserved them, and now they're resurfacing all at once. Stitched together by viewers, not journalists. That's the part that scares people in power. Because this isn't a single expose, it's a collective memory waking up. And when the public starts connecting dots on its own, narrative control slips. Which brings us to the most important question of all, and the one we'll tackle in part 3. If these stories keep surfacing, if the same patterns keep repeating, if silence keeps protecting power, then what happens when the system can't outrun its past anymore? Because eventually, every structure has to answer for what it normalized. And part 3 is where we talk about what that reckoning could look like, and why the industry is suddenly feeling the pressure. At a certain point, silence stops being protection. It becomes suspicion, and that's where the entertainment industry finds itself right now. For decades, the system relied on a simple formula: ignore the warnings, discredit the messengers, wait for the noise to pass. Most of the time, it worked, but something has changed. The stories didn't disappear, the people didn't forget, and the internet made sure nothing stayed buried. Now, old interviews, forgotten clips, and ignored allegations are being stitched together by viewers who no longer trust official narratives. And that's dangerous for any system built on controlled storytelling. Because the moment people stop asking, is this true? And start asking, why does this keep coming up? The balance of power shifts. That's exactly what's happening now. The conversation has moved beyond Orlando Brown as a person. It's no longer about whether people like him, trust him, or agree with his delivery. It's about why so many voices from so many different corners keep describing the same type of environment. An environment where access is currency, where loyalty is rewarded, where silence is enforced without needing to be spoken out loud. People are starting to notice that the industry doesn't just elevate talent, it tests compliance. And that test doesn't come with instructions. You're not told what the rules are, you're shown who gets opportunities, who gets shut out, who gets protected, who gets sacrificed. That's why viewers are revisiting careers that exploded overnight and others that vanished just as quickly. They're asking whether success always came from skill or whether proximity to power mattered more than anyone admitted. This is where the idea of rites of passage enters the conversation. Not rituals in the movie sense, but moments where boundaries blur, lines are crossed, and silence becomes the price of staying inside. Several commentators have suggested that being allowed into elite spaces isn't just about networking. It's about vulnerability. Once you're compromised, emotionally, professionally, reputationally, you're easier to control. And control doesn't require threats. It requires leverage. This is why claims about recordings, documentation, and quiet evidence have terrified people for years. Because if leverage exists, it explains everything. Why people stay silent, why denials are careful, why some stories are handled privately instead of publicly. It also explains why the industry reacts so aggressively to people who refuse to play along. Not with lawsuits at first, with ridicule, with erasure, with the slow removal of credibility. That's what people believe happened to Orlando Brown. Instead of addressing what he said, the system focused on how he said it. Instead of investigating claims, it turned him into a joke. And for a long time, that worked. Until it didn't. Because now viewers are watching his old interviews next to current events and realizing how often he spoke before the public was ready, before lawsuits, before raids, before documentaries. That timing matters, so does the pattern. Every time someone gets close to naming structures instead of individuals, the conversation derails. It becomes about mental health, about tone, about credibility, never about accountability. That's not coincidence. It's strategy. And strategies fail when too many people see them at once. What's especially unsettling right now is how many independent voices are echoing similar concerns. Not mainstream anchors, not studio-backed reporters, but comedians, former artists, assistants, background players, people with nothing left to lose. And that's the point where systems start to crack, because systems rely on aspiration. They rely on people wanting in badly enough to stay quiet. But when someone believes they're already out, already burned, silence stops being useful. That's when people talk. Orlando Brown has said more than once that he doesn't care about being liked, that he's already lost everything the industry could take from him. Whether viewers believe him or not, that mindset changes how his words land, because desperation lies. But detachment tells the truth, or at least the speaker's truth. And the industry is struggling with that right now, because it can't threaten people who aren't afraid anymore. It can't offer access to people who don't want it. And it can't erase stories that keep resurfacing through archives and screenshots. This is why the reaction has shifted from dismissal to panic, not publicly. Subtly, people notice interviews being avoided, questions going unasked, segments reframed at the last minute. They notice how fast narratives pivot to distraction the moment power is mentioned. They notice how quickly character attacks appear when conversations get too specific. That's not proof of guilt, but it is proof of fear. Fear of losing control over the story, fear of exposure, fear that the public is no longer satisfied with surface-level explanations. And this fear isn't limited to music. It stretches into film, television, sports, religion, politics, any space where fame, money, and influence intersect. because the same rules apply everywhere. Protect the brand, protect the system, protect the top, sacrifice whoever you need to. This is why people keep comparing different scandals across decades, not because they're identical, but because they end the same way. One person takes the fall, everyone else disappears into silence. Life goes on. But something feels different this time. The internet doesn't forget. The audience doesn't move on as easily. And younger viewers are far less willing to accept "trust us" as an answer. They want transparency, they want receipts, they want consistency. And when they don't get it, they investigate on their own. That's what's happening now. Viewers are cross-referencing interviews, checking timelines, comparing reactions. They're noticing who speaks and who never does. They're noticing who gets asked hard questions and who doesn't. They're noticing how often crazy people were right too early. This doesn't mean every claim is true. It means the industry no longer gets the benefit of the doubt. And once that trust is gone, it's almost impossible to get back. The biggest mistake powerful systems make is assuming the public has a short memory. History shows the opposite. People remember patterns. They remember who was protected, who was silenced, who was mocked for telling uncomfortable stories. And when the truth finally surfaces, even partially, it recontextualizes everything. That's where we are now, in the recontextualization phase, where old jokes stop being funny, old warnings stop being ignored, and old footage starts feeling prophetic. Orlando Brown may never be fully believed, but that no longer matters. What matters is that his voice is now part of a chorus, and once a chorus forms, it's impossible to isolate a single singer. The industry can still deny, still deflect, still distract, but it can't unring the bell. The questions are out there now, and they're not going away. So the real issue isn't whether Orlando Brown was telling the truth. The real issue is why the industry worked so hard to make sure nobody listened. Because silence only works when people accept it, and that era might finally be ending. And at the end of the day, this isn't about believing every claim or taking sides. It's about asking why so many stories sound the same, why certain conversations get shut down, and why the people who speak up are always the ones put on trial in the court of public opinion. The industry has relied on silence for a long time, but silence only works when people stop paying attention. So now it's your turn. Do you think voices like Orlando Brown have been dismissed too easily? Or do you believe this is just another case of internet rumors going too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because these conversations don't move forward unless people are willing to talk about them. And if you want more deep dives, timelines, and unfiltered breakdowns of what's really happening behind the scenes, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to I Love Gossip so you don't miss what's coming next, because this story isn't over.